Which way did I flip it? Did I go clockwise or anti-clockwise?
Yeah, you did that. Thank you. What was your studio like beforehand, the old studio?
So I'd say it was roughly a third of the size of this whole space. One of the things I found was I was having to make small scale work right next to large scale work. And the blessing of this new space is I get to kind of have a whole section dedicated to the smaller scale work and a whole area to kind of deal with my inks and watercolors and things like this. It kind of gives me some room to think between both practices now, which I'm really grateful for. And then we come into the main space. It's such a blessing to be able to stand this far back from each painting. Whichever way you want to look at it, I can step all the way back here and look at those, and step all the way back here, look at those, and then like there's always that moment when the work leaves the studio and it enters a show space where you're seeing it in a different way entirely.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with the perspectives, the high ceilings, the step backs. So getting a bit of a preview of how my work might look from across the room already kind of helps me think about conceiving a show a bit.
Sorry for running over here, but are these the color studies for these?
Yes, absolutely. So usually when I'm trying to decide what colors to put down first and then on top, I'll do some color studies like this. So you're kind of seeing the beginnings of them on that canvas there. There's that violet, it's the same one. If you kind of zoom in on the color and then look at it on the larger size, it just kind of gives you an idea of what the painting will look like or could look like if you wanted to go in that direction.
So this is the main room.
So this is the main room, and this is like a good opportunity for you to kind of see the full scope of the process. I found some really interesting ornamentation and design work to help me realize these abstract leaf shapes, like kind of ceramic ornamentation. I'm lifting a pretty near representation of those kinds of swirls in the painting. And I found that that was a really nice accompaniment to these figures and these bodies that are also moving in this dynamic way. An artist who I didn't even know about before I moved here and started my MFA, I was introduced to Aaron Douglas's work when I embarked on that painting masters, and it kind of changed everything. I think one of the largest inspirations, I would say, in trying to kind of make figures that are compelling. I'm definitely pulling from ancient West African history and mythology, but more recently I've tried to loosen on that and not make it so specific to me trying to represent a particular deity or a particular kind of tribal symbol. At the beginning, I was definitely focusing on my Yoruba background. My travel around the rest of the continent, recent trips to Senegal have been pretty informative and helpful in me expanding the breadth of this visual language I'm developing.
You're sort of almost creating like a new mythology that's pulling from that, like a new cast of characters and like a new world within your work.
Yeah, that's a really nice idea. I like that idea. I'm really excited to kind of show the beginning process of how these paintings are made. I'd say it's really just a drawing heavy process. Like the first thing that touches the canvas is a pencil, and then that really kind of carries throughout the whole process. So pencil on canvas to kind of draw the shapes, and then pencil on gesso, and then I mask out certain shapes so that they're two different textures and two different surfaces. So there's already from the beginning quite a textural difference that happens before any paint even touches the canvas. I then go over the pencil line with a thin brush line to kind of create this hard-edged outline over absolutely everything. Throughout this whole process of making this painting, I've done a drawing maybe about 5 times. I've just drawn the whole thing over and over again. And then later in the process, it comes to me just doing the drawing with paint. Some areas have a very loose application. Because this is a bottom layer, it's very, very loose and thin. What ends up going on top will be quite dense and opaque. Sometimes I'll decide to leave some of these transparencies throughout the whole process, and then at the end it will have a nice kind of textual difference. This is the same color, but it's just reacting differently to the clearer ground, to the white gesso ground, and so you have this textural difference, but it's the same kind of color screen that's going over the whole thing. One of the things I'm always trying to do, because the space is so flat and so shallow, I kind of want it to be as charged and busy as possible.
And are these all, so what's the tape here?
So there's just a reminder that, wait, don't do this with the same green that's everywhere else. It is a paint by number process where I'm kind of dotting it down on each kind of shape, and then keeping a note of the shapes that I don't want each color to go down on. And
note to future self.
Note to future self.
Don't paint there.
Don't paint that, yeah.
How do you keep the bodies the same scale? Do you trace them, or you? Ah.
I make the drawing, and then
cool.
You can kind of imagine
Right.
the orientation of the figure in the space. Or maybe I want the figure kind of half out of the frame like this, or kind of like I want the figure down here. And then that's been, yeah, a really exciting and fun part of this process that helps me twist the orientation of these characters. Tracing paper has really become my best friend. You know, anyone who really spends a lot of time drawing things over and over again, you kind of have good drawing days and bad drawing days. But the kind of tracing paper helps me capture those good drawing days and make sure that every underpainting and drawing is the way I want it to be. So suddenly there's no kind of true north in a way. Suddenly the orientation can be really, really fluid. Yeah, you're seeing a very similar pattern repeat through the work. There's this flow that I really enjoy that you can start to see when you understand that it's this figure that's just swirling through the space. A piece like this one and this one have a right way up. So I think that this figure that's profiled looking at us from the side is your giveaway of which is the right way up of these paintings. But the rest of them can go anyway. This can also go
Wow.
this way.
And it's wild how different it looks now. I mean, it's a completely...
So that's a different
work.
orientation. And then...
You want me to grab the other pink? Oh, you got it.
I got it. That's another way it can go. Yeah, and then it can keep flipping.
Yeah.
And again, I haven't figured out what that means, but it certainly feels really liberating in making these works.
Being able to change your perspective too, talking about how it can be so arduous working on them and like doing the outlines and getting everything, the repetition. I feel like rotating them and seeing them anew, even though it's something you've been working on, probably breaks that up a little bit.
Exactly,
yeah.
It creates a lot of space and just a lot of room and gives me like a mental break every time.
Oh, wow.
I've been enjoying printmaking as a natural balance to my practice for quite a while now. I have, there we go. Yeah, these are some prints I was making by myself at grad school. This is a monotype. I did want to show you guys these. Yeah, these are some lithograph prints that I made last summer. This has really informed the paintings as well. The ideas that I'm doing on large scale now, really I first realized on this scale with these works, and I kind of understood that they could work.
Do you think working small is harder than working large?
Definitely, because you can't rely on your body and you can't rely on your kind of physicality to translate physicality. So if I want to make these bodies seem weighted, heavy, real, and dynamic, I can't just kind of use my scope or my wingspan or my dimensions. You kind of have to just rely on a certain precision and detail to represent something in the way you want it. It's a really humbling medium. You end up kind of having to slow right down. It's like, okay, yeah, you can draw, but like, are you able to collaborate with that drawing? Are you able to collaborate with a medium that is really hard to control? You know, the print press and the way that ink moves through the press, there are so many things and variables that you literally cannot control. So you have to accept a certain level of unforeseen outcomes, and you have to embrace that with your overall idea for the piece.